So, when did beekeepers become a thing? It's a question I had the other day, and it has quite the rich history to it. One of the oldest records of a person playing with bees, if we can call it that, is from the Cave of the Spider in the municipality of Bicorp, which is located in Valencia, Spain. Dating somewhere from 15,000 BC to 6,000 BC, depending on what they feel like saying. In the cave drawing, you can see a person roaming around collecting honey with bees running around them, probably trying to sting them and kill them. It wasn't quite beekeeping back then, as much as a hit and run and hoping for the best. But it was still very well represented around the world, from Africa, Europe, China, even the Mayans got a piece of it. Skipping just a few years, in Egypt the use of honey developed in many different ways. From common food uses of it, it was an important part of trade, sometimes used in paint. It was also used in medical practices, shipbuilding, and a very important part of mummification. There's also mention of it used in anointing, which is a ritual of pouring oils, milk, butter, and as mentioned honey. It's usually used for religious or medical practices. But also, while not as common, it was also used for making figurines of deities and gods in the Egyptian culture. According to Egyptian mythology, when Ra, the god of sun, cried, those tears later on would become bees that would pollinate all the flowers.
There is nothing that can prepare you for the devastation you're about to endure! There's no escaping the fury of the most supreme Egyptian god!
What a nice fella, I love him. But strangely enough, it wasn't used for candles at all, like in Europe, because oil lamps were used for it instead, so not much purpose for it there. Bees became such a large part of Egyptian cultures that they even used it as a symbol from at least 3100 BC. And they left us a bit more drawings of them playing with bees. Now, the Romans. Even the Romans practiced beekeeping. Now, they mostly use it for sweetening their food and drinks, but they didn't use it only for that, of course. It was still used in medicine and trade, of course. With now its wax being used in different purposes like candles, art, and writing tablets. Like in Egypt, beekeeping became a huge part of society, and some towns had entire reputations depending if they had good or bad honey. Beekeeping was a big deal in Rome, until they did their whole Feldaf thing in 476 CE, but lol. Now, as I mentioned before, even the Mayans got on this train, so let's go to their cart just for a bit. Now, the Mayans were a bit smarter than everybody else. In this case, they domesticated a type of stingless bee, so they had way less problems of having to challenge them to a duel just to collect some honey. By 300 BC, they already achieved the highest levels of stingless bee practices in the world. According to some early Spanish accounts, the Mayans had a well-established apiaries with hundreds and sometimes thousands of native stingless honey hives. I'm glad nothing bad happened to that. Now, going back to the Romans just for a bit again, they were still the main beekeeping force in Europe until 1453, when they did their whole Feldaf thing again. But the demand of honey and wax was still large, because during the Middle Ages, honey and wax became essential commodities for trading, like in Egypt beforehand. Churches had their own beehives for some time for their own purpose. And when the time finally came to explore the Americas, one of the first things to ship out with the boys were bees, because, they were very useful. And it's after this point that beekeeping starts evolving a bit faster than before in Europe and America. Now we are going to talk a little bit about Reverend L.L. Langstroth, or also known as the father of American beekeeping. He designed, as it's well known, the Langstroth hive. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, just that's how it is. He invented the beehive that's most commonly associated with modern beekeeping, with movable frames as not to disturb the bees, which is how he got his title of father of the American beekeeping. This is not to say he invented them, or the first one to do it at all, because beehives existed since Egyptian times, with there being photos of beekeepers blowing smoke into the hives to calm the bees, because that's just what works for them, don't ask. Most common beehives before Langstroth were skeps and bee gums. So this was really just a long history of tinkering with beehives, which led to this design, which is now a standard in many places around the world now. We're just, a bit different specs over time. So now we're in the modern times where beekeeping is still a successful business and even a hobby for some people. But it's no secret that bees don't have it the best right now, and the whole pandemic also didn't help with beekeepers staying at home without being able to make some money and help the bees pollinate the places. But hopefully in the future, it's something that will improve over time and not get worse. Lol. So, when did beekeepers become a thing? A really long time ago. Not really a specific date. Thousands of years ago.